Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming by. I know I'm the last thing between you and some lunch, so I'll try and keep it brief and inspiring. It's never easy to follow the legendary Trooper Sanders, but I will do my best. I'm Alex Diaz. I have the immense privilege of working with so many in the room on Google.org's AI grant-making efforts, and I'll share a bit more about the journey we've been on the last couple of years. I promise to leave you with some concrete examples of nonprofit-led AI projects that are generating tremendous human impact. But before I get there, I want to share a bit more about Google.org, the questions we ask ourselves in scoping projects in this space. And then before I jump into specific AI examples, we need to talk about data. So we'll get there. For the past 5 years, we at Google.org have been motivated by a question: how can we ensure that the benefits of AI reach everyone? Helping nonprofits to harness AI's potential aligns with our founding mission of using technology to solve some of the world's thorniest problems. It's an exciting time in AI development, and we think that AI is more critical than ever to delivering on that mission. We've invested over $200 million and over 160,000 pro bono hours through programs like the Google.org Fellowship to advance AI's responsible use in society. Fellows are Googlers who embed full-time with nonprofits for up to 6 months to build tools that really accelerate their impact. They are the surge of capacity that helps organizations really make a step change, and it's pretty notable that they've already dedicated over 18 years of time to this type of work. Across a range of topics, we've seen the benefits that AI can bring to organizations, and our grantees report to us that they are achieving their outcomes in a third of the time and at half the cost, really capturing that efficiency, accelerant nature of AI. AI serves as a force multiplier, and it can analyze massive data sets, identify patterns, and provide insights in a fraction of the time and cost that humans require, while also enabling countless other tasks that empower organizations with new data and critically give them more time back to advance other aspects of their work. AI pursued boldly and responsibly can be a foundational technology that transforms people's lives, but it's only possible when we use AI for what it's actually good at. It's important to start with a problem set orientation. What problems are you trying to solve? For which users? With what partners? What is the set of solutions, importantly technical and not, that exists to address that problem? We do not need to be AI solutionists. Let's tailor solutions to problems. And innovation happens at the front lines, many of you in this room. It's most critical that systems are built with users and guided by experts in relevant domains, taking an inclusive approach and relying on partnerships. The same questions many of you ask for your programs are the same questions of technology tools. Who does this benefit versus leave behind? If we divert resources to this, who's losing out and what are those trade-offs? What data exists to address this problem and inform the solution? And critically, are these data complete, representative, accessible? On this data point, we've been working for years to improve data access and equity so that no one is left behind by the advances in technology. We co-funded and created efforts like the Lacuna Fund to help produce labeled data sets on domains like language, climate, and health that address urgent problems in communities. More accessible and useful data, of course, can make future AI applications better and fairer. However, as we all know, just having access to data is insufficient. Every moment around the world, people and organizations are generating data that is publicly available and could be extraordinarily useful to solving critical problems like climate change, hunger, and epidemics. The problem is that most of society's complex problems don't get solved with a single data source. And a lot of these data sets are fragmented by state and country borders, collected and published by different agencies and research institutions, and shared in different formats on varying timelines. This fragmentation gets in the way of being able to use the world's information. Analyzing these data sets can be difficult, time-consuming, and cost-prohibitive. How can these data sets interoperate with one another to derive novel insights? There's a team at Google, Data Commons, with whom we've been partnering to organize the world's publicly available data and make it more accessible and useful. Data Commons is open source, open process, accessible to all, And the team has sought to standardize and process 250 billion data points from publicly available, reliable sources and bring them together to create one easily understandable view. Data Commons is now harnessing the power of AI, specifically LLMs, large language models, to create a natural language interface that allows users to ask questions in their own words. LLMs are used to understand the query, and results come straight from Data Commons, including a link to the original data source. And this approach allows the Data Commons to avoid some of the current known limitations of LLMs, like hallucination and factuality. But let me give you a concrete example of this tool, and a big shout out to Joseph, if he's in the room, who's been driving a lot of this work. We have been engaging the UN Statistics Division to identify ways to enable decision makers like UN entities, governments, NGOs, private enterprise, and researchers to make more SDG-backed data decisions and empower journalists and civil society to tell more data-driven stories to the world's most pressing issues. We helped bring the official UN SDG data into the Commons and collaborated and built and launched the UN Data Commons for the SDGs, where now users can query this database like how much food goes wasted around the world, or compare progress against poverty in Mexico, Nigeria, and Pakistan, and instantly receive information and visuals helping people track progress against the SDGs and make it easy and open to all. I really encourage you all to play with this tool and see what novel insights you can derive at the speed of your curiosity. But now I'd love to give you a few more examples from practitioners working in specific domains like food security, health, and crisis response. Have you ever heard of Wadhwani AI in India? They are a nonprofit that built an app where you shake out a single crop onto some paper, take a picture of the pests that fall out, and the app will tell you how much pesticide to spray, how often, and when to do it too. Plus, it notifies neighboring farmers of risks to their crops, even when there's low network coverage. Utilizing this intervention increased farmers' profits by 20% and reduced the use of pesticides by 25%. The Indian government loved this solution so much that they're now white labeling it and making it accessible to the entire country, which for us, when we view the role of philanthropy, is really philanthropy as risk capital approach, where we take bold and responsible bets on new social innovation, but critically work with the right partners, like government, that have the public accountability, but that can also help scale sustainably to a broader user base. And that is critical for this role, because no one is voting us into power to create and affect decisions that affect the public interest. So that's where these partnerships are really critical. I want to give an example that hits a little bit closer to home. I'm the father of an almost 1-year-old, literally birthday's a month away, who surprised my wife and I last year by deciding to enter this world 7 weeks early. We were lucky to have access to world-class healthcare services and technology that saved his life. Thanks to AI, access to some life-saving preventative screenings are now attainable in low-resource environments. Almost 90% of maternal deaths are avoidable if women receive timely intervention, yet access to timely, accurate health information has been a significant challenge. Big shout out to Carla in the room, who's led a lot of this work. In sub-Saharan Africa, where maternal mortality remains notably high, low-cost ultrasound devices augmented by AI can enable providers to deliver care, increasing access to screening and helping to identify high-risk pregnancies earlier. Google's research team has been partnering with our grantee, Jacaranda Health, who's a Kenyan-based nonprofit focused on improving health outcomes for mothers and babies. They're focusing on using handheld ultrasound devices that don't need to be attached to larger machines. And in parallel, Jacaranda's SMS-based digital health service uses behavioral nudges and a natural language-powered help desk to triage questions for clinically urgent cases, triaging more than 5,000 messages daily, with expansion plans underway to support 3 million mothers. Now, I wanted to close with one more example, but this time from the climate space. And it was hard to choose just one, so I'm cheating and giving you 3. Whether it's Climate Trace, who developed the world's first independent near real-time greenhouse gas monitoring platform for 99% of global human emissions and released it free to the public, or Rainforest Connection, who use acoustic technology to help stop illegal deforestation and monitor the biodiversity of threatened wildlife and rainforests, there's so many climate-related problems where AI has been driving significant advancement. The example I'd like to close on is one that I've been working on since I joined the team in 2019, providing direct cash transfers to those affected by natural disasters. Now, floods are the most common and deadliest of natural disasters, putting communities at risk. Google's research team has been applying AI to advance the field of flood forecasting, working in concert with many hydrologists around the world. And they provide these outputs to the public in many ways, through partnerships with organizations, governments, with the World Meteorological Organization. And as part of our efforts, we actively collaborate with local humanitarian organizations on the ground that utilize this flood information to accelerate their ongoing anticipatory actions. What that means is giving people aid before the flood actually hits. We partner with an organization, Give Directly, which is an aid organization that supports communities in need via unconditional cash transfers. And together we tested how riverine flood forecasts and digital cash infrastructure could enable communities to receive payments in advance of flooding to help them better prepare and to save their lives and livelihoods. We piloted our collaboration in Mozambique during Cyclone Freddy in March 2023, where Give Directly provided cash transfers to over 4,100 households based on these forecasts. The pilot provided us with meaningful insights regarding the level of geospatial data and lead time aid organizations need to distribute the cash to communities expected to be affected. Now we're working to scale this work with Give Directly, and we just brought in the International Rescue Committee, who are really interested in using this work, and they will be supporting over 7,000 households in the upcoming flood season in Nigeria. Now, scaling this work, as with any work, is hard. There are some inherent characteristics of AI-enabled solutions that should enable scale, but we need to bring together more actors to make this happen thoughtfully. Trust, evidence generation, understanding in these systems will help us understand as well as drive adoption, but ultimately it's going to take all of us to get this right. And we need a diversity of voices at the table, bringing different expertise and understanding of how AI might affect their sectors and their communities. Convenings like today's are essential to doing this right, and I'm excited to collaborate with all of you to ensure the benefits of AI are accessible to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I have a question over here in the center.
Good morning. Patrice Cromwell from the Annie Casey Foundation. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your domestic work and whether you had specific initiatives really focused on eliminating poverty.
Great question. Yes, we've worked closely with Benefits Data Trust, so that's one example. And then on direct cash transfer work, we've done that in the US as well. So for Hurricanes Ian and Fiona in Puerto Rico and in Florida, we've worked with organizations like Give Directly and others. A cool thing about the US, where there's a little bit more of a data-rich environment in terms of there's a social protection registry, people have access to census data. We worked with an organization called Propel that powers the digital SNAP app. So automatically, that's a screen of everyone that's using this app is socioeconomically vulnerable. Can we then use them as a screen and say, hey, here's a drop-down menu. We know you're about to be hit by a hurricane. Do you want to receive an unconditional cash transfer? Now, critically, when most people receive that, they're like, is this a scam? So we needed to work with the organizations to understand how do we surface this information in a way and bringing that user experience research into the design of this one intervention. So that's one example of many. I'm happy to give you many more if that's helpful. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, thank you. My name is Sherry Huang. I'm with the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. It was awesome to see these very different use cases in different sectors because I'm working with programs across the Hewlett Foundation, from our environment and climate team to our democracy team to our performing arts team, to really make sense of like what AI means for our grant making strategies. And so I've been having all these conversations with my colleagues, and something one of our program officers said to me, which made a very deep impression, is how do we know when we're not experts of AI and like we're starting to learn about AI? How do we know that we're not doing more harm than good by investing and supporting the wrong projects, the right or wrong projects? And I was wondering, based on your experience with your team, do you have any advice for us? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, especially in the world of the last year plus, where there's this hype cycle and mania, right? Like everyone's like, how do we get a slice of this AI pie? And there's a lot of like AI marketing lingo. I think the guidance that I give is kind of at the beginning, like start with the problem that you're trying to solve and what solutions already exist. AI is not monolithic, it's not cheap, and will take some level of expertise if you're building custom models to maintain and sustain and make sure that you're not exacerbating outcomes. So I would go on that like user experience journey and figure out what solutions exist that are not AI, and are those good enough for what you're trying to solve? And if not, then start to explore whether AI can be helpful in one domain or another. And I would say, like, unless you're making like I call it like combinatorial permutations, unless there's a lot of data that you're trying to make and trying to decipher patterns, AI might not be helpful right now. But there are some off-the-shelf tools that exist that require low barriers to entry that might be helpful as one part of that flow. So I don't want to lose sight of that, where if there is like a computer vision model that might be helpful to like insert an image and then you can classify things and doesn't require a lot of technical expertise to deploy, so long as you are comfortable in testing it, then work out and see what those off-the-shelf models might be able to provide. But I'd say start with the problem and see where you go from there.
Hi, Alex. I'm Lillian with New America, and we're looking at AI both from a policy perspective as well as a sort of the implications of a lot of the deployment of AI across, especially community level. And one of the things, I really appreciate that comment. One of the things that we're seeing is just the reduction of thinking about AI as a chatbot, and so what I always call like the chatbotification of AI. How do we start to, I think, both and as we're working with communities, really learning that there's not a keen understanding about what are the appropriate use cases of AI. So there's a lot of nuance even in just like, are we solving an analytics, a predictive analytics problem, or are we actually wanting to use AI? So what are the kinds of tools that you're all making available to the broader kind of NGO, civil society community? And then what are some things that you're thinking about or seeing that could help, I think, address some of these issues? Because it sounds like from what you're mentioning that you're seeing the same thing. And
yeah, it's a great question. And yeah, AI is definitely more than a chatbot. I mean, I fundamentally think that AI is, if not already there, pretty close to being like a general purpose technology, like in the similar vein of electricity and the steam engine. And oftentimes what we've seen is that like once AI becomes integrated so thoroughly into something and it's helpful, people stop calling it AI. No one's talking about Google Maps or Apple Maps as an AI system, but that traffic optimization model is AI. And I think so on and so forth, as these helpful use cases become more mundane, I wonder if people are going to stop calling it AI and just like, it's that tool that's helpful. So I don't know if that's a helpful orientation, but some tools that we make readily available, we have like a repository of tools and information for grantees and say, hey, these are things that we know exist. We try to work closely with our cloud team that has a lot of these resources available. That comes with a cost, right? So we need to be very careful about making sure that that organizations, that the solution they're trying to build is really tailored to that problem and that it requires that use of that tool.